The stale scent of overbrewed coffee and anxiety hung in the air of my cubicle. I stabbed at the keyboard. The latest round of edits from Client Hell, aka the new probiotic yogurt brand that thought disruption meant neon green packaging, blurring before my eyes. Knockout time. Jess, you're legally obligated to have fun with me tonight. My desk partition wobbled as Sophia leaned over it, her perfume cutting through the coffee haze. She was already in her networking armor, a little black dress that meant business of a different kind. The Bay Area Tech Alliance mixer. I groaned, not looking up. Sophomore, the last one, was just a bunch of VCs smelling each other's funding rounds and guys in Patagonia vests explaining blockchain to me very, very slowly. And free top shelf liquor. She sang, "Come on, you've been in a dry spell since What's His Face, the guy who loved his microbrew more than you. You need to get back out there. Mr. Right isn't going to knock on your cubicle wall. Mr. Right is probably at home, wisely avoiding events with synergy in the description." I muttered, but I was already saving my work. She had a point. My love life had been a series of underwhelming swipes and fizzled connections. I was 28, a project manager at Sterling Gray, no relation to me. And my most consistent relationship was with my succulents. They were thriving. My romantic prospects were not. The mixer was in a soulless, glass-walled hotel ballroom in Soma. The promised top shelf was a harried bartender pouring mid-shelf gin. Sophia immediately beelined toward a cluster of guys wearing the unofficial Silicon Valley uniform. I grabbed a drink and prepared to orbit the room, smiling until my cheeks ached. That's when I saw the anomaly. He was standing near the back, by a sad-looking ficus tree, looking as out of place as a horse at a tech conference. Not because he was unattractive, quite the opposite. Tall, sandy brown hair that needed a trim, shoulders that suggested actual physical labor. But his suit, it was a shade of navy that had been popular a decade ago. The cut generous, not slim fit. He held a glass of water, observing the room with an amused, detached expression. I wasn't the only one who noticed. I saw Mac Hendricks, a blowhard sales director from a rival company, nudge his friend. Mac was all flash Italian loafers, a watch that screamed bonus, and a personality to match. "Check out the time traveler," Mac said, not bothering to lower his voice. What did he do? Get lost on the way to a 2005 job fair? His cronies chuckled. The man by the ficus heard it. His smile didn't falter. It just softened at the edges. Turning wry, he took a sip of his water. Mac, emboldened by his audience and his third scotch, sauntered over. "Hey there, you in the right place. The agricultural convention's down the street." The man looked Mac up and down. A slow, calm appraisal. "Is it?" he said, his voice a warm, easy baritone. I must have missed the signs. Though, I have to say, the fertilizer content in here seems pretty high already. I choked on my gin and tonic. Mac's face flushed. "Excuse me? Just an observation," the man said, his tone still friendly. "Lots of polished presentation. Not much about the actual crop. Though, what is it you grow? Exactly? Apps?" I couldn't help it. A laugh escaped. Mac shot me a dirty look before turning back. "I'm in SaaS. Pal, software as a service. It's the backbone of the modern economy." "Right." The man nodded, as if genuinely interested. "So, you don't actually make a thing you can hold. You sell the idea of a thing, a subscription to a function." "Got it. We have something like that back home. We call it rain. We hope it comes. We pay for irrigation when it doesn't, but we can't ever really own it or guarantee it." Sounds stressful. Mac blinked, his prepared put-downs useless against this kind of plain-spoken, metaphorical deflection. He mumbled something and retreated. The man caught my eye. He gave a slight, conspiratorial shrug. I found myself walking over. "That was brutal," I said, smiling. "And brilliant. You just compared his multi-million-dollar SaaS platform to the weather. Well, It's all uncertain futures, isn't it? He said. His eyes were a clear, direct blue. Will it rain? Will the subscription renew? Both keep a man up at night. I'm Will. Will Anderson. Jessica Sterling. So, you're not in tech? God. No, he said with a relieved laugh. I sell commercial refrigeration, restaurant walk-in coolers, grocery store freezers. Very exciting, very tangible stuff. You can touch a freezer. It's cold. It does what it says on the tin. A literal salesman. I said, how refreshing. See what you did there. He grinned. It transformed his face, making him look younger, more open. I'm in town for a distributors meeting. My boss said to come here. Network. I think he just wanted the expense cocktail. But here I am. We talked. It was shockingly easy. He asked about my work and actually listened, not just waiting for his turn to talk about himself. He confessed he found the city exhilarating and exhausting. Everyone's in such a hurry to be somewhere else. He said, back home. You're mostly just trying to be where you are. And where is that? I asked. A little place outside Stockton. Family has some land. Almonds. A few acres of wine grapes we sell to the big guys. My dad. My 3 brothers. We all work it. 3 brothers? Your poor mother. He laughed. A rich, genuine sound. She runs the show. Trust me. Tough as nails. She'd have eaten that sass guy for breakfast and used his business card as a toothpick. I was utterly charmed. He was nothing like the men I usually met. Men who name-dropped their alma maters in the first 5 minutes, or whose identities refused to their startup. Will was solid, real. When he talked about his brothers, it was with a roll of his eyes and clear affection. Tom's the oldest. Thinks he's the foreman of the universe. Then the twins, Ben and Chad. Walking trouble. The pair of them. I spent most of my childhood either chasing after them or running from them. He didn't have slick pickup lines. He told a story about trying to fix a decades-old tractor with Chad and ending up covered in hydraulic fluid. Mom made us hose off in the yard before we could set foot in the house. The dog thought we were the best thing ever. Our conversation was interrupted by Sophia, who shot me a wide-eyed, "Who I asked this? Look." I introduced them. Will shook her hand, his grip firm, his manner polite but not fawning. Sophia, usually a sharp judge of character, gave me a subtle thumbs up behind his back. He didn't ask for my number in the ballroom. Instead, as the event was dying, he said, I know this is forward, but my idea of networking is a lot simpler. There's a taco truck 2 blocks from here that's a religious experience. I'll pastor that'll make you question your life choices. If you're not sick of talking to a refrigerator salesman, I'd love to continue this. No synergy. I promise. I went. We ate messy. Perfect tacos on a curb, laughing as grease dripped onto the paper wrappers. He told me more about the farm, the fights over the TV remote, the epic Thanksgiving football games that inevitably ended in arguments. It sounded chaotic, warm, and utterly foreign to my only child. Suburban upbringing. That was the start. Will was in the city for a week. We saw each other every night. He took me to a dive bar with a truly terrible jukebox, not a speakeasy with craft cocktails. We walked across the Golden Gate Bridge, and he wasn't obsessed with getting the perfect Instagram shot. He just wanted to feel the wind. He asked me questions about my family, my friends, what I wanted, not what I did for a living. On our last date before he went back to Stockton, we were in a park, sharing a bag of chips. I'm not a city guy, Jess, he said, his expression serious for once. My life is, it's dirt under your nails. It's early mornings. It's simple. My prospects are the family land. And with 3 brothers, that's not a fortune, split 4 ways. It's a living, a good, honest one. But it's not this. He gestured at the skyline. What makes you think I want this? I asked, and realized I meant it. The constant striving, the curated perfection of it all, exhausted me. Will felt like a gulp of clean air. He kissed me then, and it wasn't flashy or practiced. It was sweet and firm and promising. We did the long distance thing, weekend trips. He'd drive up in his dusty, dependable Ford pickup. I'd go down there, staying at a modest but clean BB in town. I met the family over pixelated video calls, his smiling, weathered parents, his boisterous brothers shouting greetings from behind them. Their house, in the background, looked comfortable, lived in, with floral wallpaper. One Friday, 6 months in, he picked me up from my apartment. He seemed nervous. "I want to show you my favorite spot," he said. He drove to the Golden Gate Bridge, but instead of walking the main path, he led me to a quieter, more rugged overlook. The city was a glittering tapestry behind us, the water churning below. "It's beautiful," I said, shivering in the ocean breeze. "Jess," he started, fumbling in his pocket. He brought out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. "I'm not a rich man. I'll probably never be a rich man. What I have is a family that drives me crazy, a job that pays the bills, and a lot of hope." He opened the box. Inside was a solitaire diamond, modest but sparkling cleanly in the twilight. "I saved for this, for months. Sold my old base boat to my buddy Chad to add to the fund. It's not much, but it's real, just like what I feel for you. I want the simple life, but I want it with you. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred the lights of the city. It was the antithesis of every over-the-top proposal I'd seen on social media. There was no flash mob, no hidden photographer, just Will, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him, and a small ring bought with a sacrificed boat. It felt like the truest thing in the world. "Yes," I whispered, throwing my arms around his neck. "Yes, 1,000 times yes," as he slid the ring onto my finger. A perfect fit. All I could think about was a future far from the noise, a future of early mornings, of honest work, of family chaos and quiet evenings on a porch. It didn't feel small. It felt like everything. The diamond on my finger felt like a secret talisman against the Monday morning blues. I typed emails with a newfound vigor, the modest stone catching the fluorescent light in tiny, defiant winks. I had spent the weekend in a blissful bubble with Will in the city, but now reality, in the form of my parents, was demanding an audience. I had told them over the phone, my voice breathless with excitement. My mother, Linda, had emitted a high-pitched "oh, honey," that I couldn't quite parse, joy or shock. My father, Robert, had simply said, "We'll talk about it, Sunday dinner." The sentence felt like a gavel drop. Sunday arrived, heavy with a tension no amount of my mother's pot roast could alleviate. I stood on the doorstep of my childhood home in the tidy, tree-lined Glen Park neighborhood, Will's hand sweating slightly in mine. He wore his one good suit, the same slightly off navy one, and carried a bouquet of grocery store carnations. He looked endearingly nervous. "They're just people," I whispered, squeezing his hand. "My people." "Right, the people who made you. No pressure," he said, with a weak smile. My mother opened the door, her face a masterpiece of conflicted hospitality. "Jessica, sweetheart." She pulled me into a hug, her eyes immediately flicking to my left hand. Her smile tightened for a nanosecond. "And you must be Will. Come in, come in." The house smelled of rosemary and anxiety. My father wasn't in the living room, the strategic retreat. We were shepherded into the dining room, where the good china was set, a formality, or a warning shot. My younger brother, Kevin, slouched in from the kitchen, a video game, controller still in his hand. He gave me a "you're in for it" look. "Hey, Jess, sup?" He nodded at Will, his assessment quick and teenage brutal. I could see him noting the suit, the shoes. Finally, Robert Sterling entered. He wore his weekend sweater and slacks, the uniform of a bank manager relaxing, but his posture was all boardroom. He shook Will's hand, his grip firm and measuring. "Will, Robert, Jessica's father. Have a seat. The dinner began with a thud of silence, punctuated by the clink of silverware. My mother launched into a frantic monologue about her garden club. So, Will, my father finally interjected, cutting through Mom's chatter about hydrangeas. Jessica tells me you're in sales. Yes, sir. Commercial refrigeration, restaurant and grocery store equipment. Commission-based? Base salary plus commission. Yes, Robert nodded, slicing his roast beef with surgical precision. Volatile. Feast or famine. Will took a sip of water. It can be, but people always need to keep food cold. It's a steady need. And before that, college? I went to Cal State Stanislaus. AG business. Paid for it myself. Working on the family farm and summers at a cold storage facility. Stanislaus, my father repeated, as if it were a distant province. And the family farm. That's your fallback? I kicked Will under the table. A warning. He just smiled. Easy. It's not a fallback. Sir, it's home. It's what we do. My dad, my brothers, me. How many acres are we talking? The question was casual, but the intent was a financial probe. Will shrugged. A genuine, uncalculated gesture. Oh, it's a decent spread. Few hundred acres. But it's not all ours outright. There's a bank involved. Like most family farms, we grow almonds. Mostly. Some contract wine grapes. It's a living. A good one. But you're not buying yachts. I saw my father's jaw work. A bank involved. Not all ours. Few hundred acres. In his world. Assets were clear, leveraged, and listed on a balance sheet. This was fog. My mother saw the storm brewing. And your family, 3 brothers. Your poor mother must have been busy. Will's face lit up. She's a saint. Still is. Runs the house. Used to run us. Still tells us what to do. If we're smart enough to listen. And are they all still on the farm? My mother asked. The on the farm sounding exotic and slightly worrying. Tom, the oldest. He's mostly there. The twins, Ben and Chad. They float. Construction. Seasonal work. They lend a hand when it's crunch time. We'll set it with fond exasperation. But I saw my parents exchange a glance. Unstable. Non-committal. The conversation limped on. Kevin asked Will if he played video games. Not since Mario Kart on the old Nintendo. Will laughed, baffling Kevin. My mother asked about wedding plans. A desperate pivot to safer ground. Will wiped his mouth with his napkin. Well, we've talked about it. We're thinking simple. Back home, we have a big old oak tree that'd be perfect for an outdoor ceremony. My mom is a fantastic cook. She'd handle the food. My brothers and I could build a dance floor. String up some lights. Something real. Not too fussy. The silence this time was absolute. My father put his fork down. It made a sharp click against the china. Let me understand this, Robert said, his voice dangerously calm. You proposed to my daughter with a modest ring. His eyes flicked to my hand. And your plan is to have a potluck wedding in a field, built by your itinerant brothers, while your mother cooks. Dad, I hissed. Will's pleasant expression didn't change, but his eyes cooled a few degrees. It wouldn't be a potluck. Sir, it would be a home-cooked meal, made with love. And my brothers may be a lot of things, but they can swing a hammer. It would be a celebration of family. Our family. Your family. My father corrected. What about Jessica's family? Her friends? Her life here? Are they supposed to drive to the middle of nowhere for a barnyard hoedown? Robert, please, my mother whispered, her face pale. It's not the middle of nowhere. It's my home. Will said, his tone even but firm. And Jessica loves the idea. We want something that represents us, not just a show for other people. What us? My father pushed his chair back, his composure cracking. The us were my daughter, who has a college degree and a career in San Francisco, becomes a farmer's wife, waiting for the almond crop to come in. You have 3 brothers. Will, that land, that decent spread with the bank on it, gets split 4 ways. What does that leave for you? For her? A plot of dirt and a mountain of debt? I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. That's enough. No, Jessica, it is not enough. He boomed, turning his fury on me. This is your life. He's selling you a fantasy of simple living. It's not simple. It's hard. And it's poor. You'll be chasing chickens and counting pennies while your friends are buying houses and taking vacations. He has nothing to offer you. Will stood now. 2. He wasn't angry. He looked profoundly sad. Mr. Sterling, I love your daughter. I'm offering her a life that's honest. A home that's filled with people who will love her. I'm not offering a stock portfolio. I'm offering myself. And I think that's what she wants. She doesn't know what she wants. My father shouted. She's infatuated with the idea of you. The rugged, salt of the earth fantasy. The reality is grime and struggle and no way out. Tears of rage and humiliation streamed down my face. You don't know him. You don't know us. You're judging him by his bank statement, not by his character. Character doesn't pay the mortgage. Jessica, then I don't want your mortgage. I yelled. The words hung in the air, shocking everyone, including me. My father stared at me, his face hardening into a mask of bitter disappointment. Fine. You make your choice. You choose this path. But you do it without my support. Not financially. Not any other way. You want to marry into this rustic experiment? He spat the word. You go right ahead. But don't expect me to be there to pick up the pieces when it falls apart. He threw his napkin on the table and walked out of the room. The sound of his study door slamming shut echoed through the house. The aftermath was a numb, tearful blur. My mother was crying silently. Kevin stared at his plate, looking young and embarrassed. Will gently took my arm. We should go. My mother followed us to the door. Jessica, honey, he doesn't mean it. He meant every word. I said, my voice hollow, in the quiet of Will's truck. The silence was thick. I felt shattered. Will reached over and took my hand, his thumb stroking my knuckles. I'm so sorry, I finally whispered. Don't be, he said, his voice low and steady. He's your father. He's scared for you. He sees a life he doesn't understand and thinks it's a threat. He pulled the truck over on a quiet side street and turned to face me. His eyes were earnest in the dashboard glow. Jess, listen to me. I love you, not because of your family, or your job, or where you come from. And you need to love me, or not love me, for the same reasons. Not because you're rebelling against your dad. Not because you think my life is some romantic escape. But because of me, the man who sells freezers and loves you. Can you do that? His words were a bomb and a challenge. He wasn't asking me to choose between him and my father. He was asking me to choose us for the right reasons. It stripped away the noise, the anger, the class anxiety, and went straight to the heart of it. I looked at him, at his kind, worried face, at the simple sincerity that had drawn me in from the start. My father saw poverty and instability. I saw integrity and a different kind of wealth. Yes, I said, my voice firmer now. I choose you. I choose us. He leaned over and kissed me, a kiss that felt like a vow sealed in the aftermath of a battle. As we drove back to my apartment, the diamond on my finger felt heavier, but also more real. It wasn't a symbol of a fairy tale. It was a pledge to build something real, something that would have to withstand storms far worse than my father's disapproval. That night, lying awake, the echo of my father's ultimatum, without my support, played on a loop. But alongside it was Will's voice. I'm offering myself that I clung to that. It had to be enough. The ring felt like a target on my hand. In the week following the disastrous dinner, every glance in the office seemed to linger a half-second too long on my left finger. My yes had solidified into a physical fact, and with it, a new, unspoken categorization among my colleagues. I was no longer just Jessica for marketing. I was Jessica, Who's marrying the farmer? The first shot came from Sophia's official engagement lunch at a chic, overpriced brunch spot in Hayes Valley. It was supposed to be a celebration. My 4 closest friends from college were there. Sophia, the fiercely ambitious PR manager, Chloe, who'd married a pediatrician and curated a perfect Instagram life, Amber, whose husband was a partner at a venture capital firm, and Lauren, perpetually single and brutally observant. Let's see it. Chloe squealed as we settled into our booth. Her own ring, a massive oval diamond set in a platinum band, flashed as she reached for my hand. I extended it, a flicker of pride still battling the nerves. The modest solitaire looked almost stark against the white linen. A beat of silence. Too long. Oh, Amber said, her smile not reaching her eyes. It's sweet. Classic. It's exactly what I wanted. I said, a little too defensively. Well, saved for it. It's real. Of course it's real. Honey, Sophia said, patting my haunt, her tone implying the opposite. So, tell us everything. The proposal was on the bridge? How romantic. What about the wedding? I took a deep breath, launching into our vision. We're thinking something really personal. At his family's place in the valley. A simple outdoor ceremony under this huge, old oak tree he loves. His mom is an amazing cook, so she's going to handle the food, homemade, family recipes, and his brothers are going to help build a little dance floor, string up lights. As I spoke, their faces underwent a subtle transformation. Polite interest froze into masks of bewildered concern. I saw the glances exchanged over their mimosa glasses. His mother is cooking? Lauren asked, her eyebrow arched. For the whole wedding? Well, she'll have help. It's what they do. Big family gatherings. And the brothers are building the venue? Chloe's nose wrinkled slightly. Is that safe? They're contractors. I lied, stretching the truth about Ben and Chad's seasonal work. They know what they're doing. Amber leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was somehow louder than her normal tone. Jess, sweetie, listen. I'm just going to say it. This all sounds very Little House on the Prairie, and not in a cute, vintage way, in a we still churn our own butter way. You're a city girl, a professional. Is this really the life you see for yourself? The question hung in the air, smothering the clatter of cutlery. It was the same question my father had asked, but wrapped in faux concern instead of outright fury. It was somehow worse. It's the life I'm choosing. Amber, I said, my voice tight, with a man I love. It's not about a spectacle. It's about authenticity. Authenticity is one thing, Sophia said carefully, playing mediator. But a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Don't you want it to be, I don't know, elevated? You deserve to be a princess for a day, not the head cheesemaker. The table tittered nervously. My face burned. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe. I was pushing through the heavy door when I heard their voices, unmuffled by the running water I hadn't yet turned on. 3 brothers? It was Amber's voice, dripping with disbelief. On a farm? Jesus. The inheritance drama alone will be a Netflix series. The Central Valley Squabbles. Chloe's laugh was a sharp tinkle. I give it 2 years. Once she's had to can her own tomatoes and shovel whatever it is you shovel on a farm, she'll be running back to the city. That ring will be a souvenir from her rustic phase. Do you think he even has health insurance? Lauren mused, her voice dry. Or is it more of a rub some dirt on it situation? The door swung shut behind me, cutting off their laughter. I stood at the sink, gripping the cool porcelain, staring at my reflection. The happy glow from the proposal was gone, replaced by a sickening humiliation. They weren't worried for me. They were amused by me. I was becoming a cautionary tale, a piece of gossip to be dissected over brunch. The whispers weren't confined to my friends. At work, they took on a different, more patronizing tone. In the kitchenette, I walked in on 2 junior associates from the design team. So she's actually doing it. One said, stirring her tea, trading her cube for a cornfield. Talk about a downgrade. Maybe she's into the whole overalls aesthetic. The other giggled. Or maybe the guy is just that hot. A hot farmer is a trope for a reason. They saw me and fell silent, offering tight smiles before scurrying away. My boss, a well-meaning but out-of-touch man in his 50s, called me into his office to check in. Jessica, great work on the Yogurtha brief. He began, then shifted uncomfortably. Personal question. This fiancé of yours, this farm situation, it's not going to impact your mobility, is it? Relocation isn't on the table? We value you here, but we need commitment to the Bay Area. The implication was clear. My personal choices were now a professional liability. No, sir, I said stiffly. No relocation. Not yet. A treacherous voice in my head added. The final blow came from my father. It wasn't a phone call, it was a typed letter, delivered to my apartment mailbox on crisp, heavyweight stationery. It was so formal it felt like a legal document. Jessica, further to our conversation, I wish to make my position unequivocally clear. Your decision to proceed with this marriage, against all reasoned counsel, is one I cannot and will not support. Effective immediately, any and all financial assistance from your mother and me will cease. This includes contributions toward your wedding, which, based on your description, will likely be a modest affair in any case. More importantly, I will not be funding what I see as the inevitable consequence. Your eventual return when this romantic fantasy collides with economic reality. Furthermore, while I will always be your father, I cannot in good conscience participate in a ceremony that symbolizes, to me, a profound mistake. Do not expect my presence. I hope, in time, you will see this not as an ultimatum, but as the painful consequence of your own choice. My door will be open when you come to your senses. Robert Sterling. I read it 3 times, the words blurring. The cold, clinical language hurt more than his shouting. He wasn't just angry, he was disowning the event. And by extension, a part of me, the finality of it, stole the air from my lungs. That night, when Will called, my voice was flat, robotic, as I relayed the highlights. The brunch, the kitchenette gossip, the letter. Jessica, honey, I'm so sorry. Will's voice was a warm blanket over the phone line, tinged with anger. Those people, they don't get it. They live in a world of labels and price tags. They can't see what we have. What do we have? Will, the question slipped out, born of sheer exhaustion and doubt. Because from where I'm standing, we have a mountain of judgment and a father who won't walk me down the aisle. We have each other, he said, his voice intense. We have a future we're building from the ground up. Literally, it's not going to be easy. I never said it would be, but it's going to be ours. Not your father's, not Amber's, not your boss's, ours. A little house, maybe with a porch, a garden, crazy family dinners, real life. Jess, not this performative life everyone else is chasing. He painted the picture again, the one that had first seduced me, the quiet mornings, the tangible work, the love that wasn't measured in carats or square footage. It was a lifeline. My mom is sending you her famous peach cobbler recipe, he said, shifting tone. She said to tell you it's a welcome to the family gift. And Ben and Chad got in a fist fight over who gets to give the best man speech. Tom had to break it up. It's chaos here, but it's our chaos, and there's a place for you in it. I managed a wet laugh. The image was so absurd, so real compared to the polished cruelty of my friends. I miss you, and I hate that they're making me doubt this. Us. Don't let them, he said softly, firmly. The doubt is the price of admission to something real. Everyone else is taking the easy ride. We're choosing the path, and it's going to be worth it. I promise. After we hung up, I looked at the rejection letter from my father. then at the simple ring on my finger. Two symbols, pulling me in opposite directions. One was cold, hard, certain in its rejection. The other was a small, warm circle of metal, a promise of something uncertain but chosen. I picked up the letter, walked to the kitchen, and held it over the sink. I flicked on the lighter I used for candles. The corner of the expensive paper caught, curling and blackening, the harsh words dissolving into fragile ash. I dropped it into the stainless steel basin and watched it burn out. The act was symbolic, childish even. It didn't change my father's mind. It didn't stop the whispers. But as I washed the gray residue down the drain, I felt a sliver of resolve harden inside me. Will was right. This was the path, and I was going to walk it, even if I had to walk it alone. For now, his voice in the darkness was enough. It had to be. The burned remains of my father's letter were a gritty smear in my sink drain, a daily reminder of the line I'd crossed. The initial, defiant high of rebellion faded, replaced by the grinding logistics of reality. Love, I was discovering, didn't pay deposits. A week after the brunch debacle, I sat at my kitchen table, a spreadsheet open on my laptop, bank statements and invoice printouts scattered like fallen leaves. The number at the bottom was blinking red in my mind, if not on the screen. Will's voice, warm and reassuring, came through my phone's speaker, and Mom says she's got the ceremony site all picked out. Under the big oak near the old equipment shed, she's already started clearing the brush. Says it'll be perfect. That's great. Honey, I said, my eyes fixed on the column labeled SF expenses. My half. The photographer I'd loved wanted $4,000. The dress I'd tried on, not a princess ball gown, but a simple, elegant sheath, was $1,200. The modest bouquet and boutonnieres, $500. Flights and a 2-night stay for my 3 bridesmaids, Sophia, begrudgingly, had agreed, plus 2 other, less judgmental friends at a budget hotel. Another $1,500. It was all so normal, and it was sinking me. Jess, you there? Yeah, sorry, just looking at numbers. Will, about the photographer, the one I told you about? Her work is incredible, very natural, not posed. The one from San Francisco. His tone shifted, a familiar, gentle caution entering it. Babe, we talked about this. My cousin Erica has a really nice DSLR. She did her friend's wedding, and the pictures came out great. She'd do it for free. I closed my eyes. I'd seen Erica's Facebook album. Great was an overstatement. Decently lit snapshots was more accurate. It's the one thing that lasts. You know, the pictures, and the marriage lasts. Jess, he said, softly but firmly, the pictures are just pictures. We're trying to be smart here. A fancy photographer is a luxury, not a necessity. It's not us. It's not us. The phrase was becoming a mantra, a blanket veto against anything that strayed from his vision of rustic simplicity, a vision that, I was starting to realize, was also defined by a very strict budget. His budget, but my half of the costs here. I started. I told you, my family's covering everything on our end. The venue, free. The food, Mom and the aunts are cooking. The beer and wine. We'll get a keg and some cases from the discount store. The music, Tom's putting together a playlist on a speaker. Your side is just your dress, your people's travel, stuff like that. We always knew that. We had not always known that. Or at least, I hadn't fully processed what simple meant in financial terms. It meant his family provided the framework of a wedding, and I was responsible for filling it with the details that made it feel like my wedding too. And my resources were dwindling fast. My savings are taking a serious hit. Will, I said, unable to keep the strain out of my voice. There was a pause on the other end. I know, and I'm sorry. I wish I could give you the world, but I can't. What I can give you is a real home, a real life, with no debt hanging over us from one day of partying. Is that so bad? It wasn't bad. It was responsible. It was adult. And it felt, in that moment, incredibly unfair. No, I whispered. It's not bad. But after we hung up, the resentment simmered. Why was his definition of real the only valid one? Why was my desire for beautiful photographs a betrayal of our values? The weight of my father's withdrawal pressed down on me. His financial support, which I'd always taken for granted for a milestone like this, was gone. The safety net had been yanked away. A few days later, I was in a bridal salon in the marina with my mother. It was a concession. She'd insisted on paying for the dress. A last bastion of maternal support in the Cold War with my father. The atmosphere was strained. She fluttered around me, adjusting the sample gown I'd tried on, the $1.200 sheath. You look beautiful, honey, she said, her voice thick. She was crying, but not the happy tears of a mother of the bride. Mom, don't, I said, staring at my reflection. The dress was perfect. It felt like me. But I saw a stranger in the mirror, a woman getting married in a field, with a cousin on photography duty, her father absent. She sniffled, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I just pictured something different. The St. Francis Hotel, you in a cathedral train, your father dancing with you to Butterfly Kisses. The song was a cliché, but it shattered me. It was the wedding she'd dreamed of for me since I was a little girl. A dream born of her own middle-class aspirations. This is my dream now, Mom, I said, but it sounded hollow. Is it? She asked, her gaze meeting mine in the mirror. Or is it Will's dream, and you're just accommodating? Because that's what we do. Jessica, we accommodate. But sometimes, you need to accommodate yourself. The saleswoman, sensing the tension, discreetly retreated. I love him, I said, the statement a plea. I know you do, sweetheart, and he seems like a good man, a kind man, but love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't stop you from wanting pretty things, from wanting a day that feels special in the way you imagine it. She came closer, putting her hands on my shoulders. Her touch was warm, her words a gentle, painful truth. I'm not saying you need a $50,000 wedding, but a little help. Will's family, are they contributing at all? To your part? I shook my head, the lace neckline suddenly feeling like a chokehold. They're doing the location, the food, the infrastructure. She sighed, a world of disappointment in that sound. So you're paying to attend your own wedding. And your father, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. From her purse, she pulled out a plain white envelope and pressed it into my hand. It's not much. 5,000. It's from my personal account. Don't tell your father. Mom, I can't. You can. And you will. Her voice was firm now. Use it for the photographer. Or for a honeymoon. Something for you. For Bothoff you. Just promise me you're not making a mistake. I took the envelope. Its weight a crushing mix of guilt and relief. It was a lifeline, but it felt like a betrayal of the we're in this together. Just us narrative I was trying to build with Will. The final crack came during a phone call about the honeymoon. I'd been researching cheap cabins in Tahoe, trying to make the camping idea work. But a part of me yearned for warmth, for sand, for a clean break from everything. I found a last-minute deal for a 4-star resort in Maui. It was still a stretch, but with my mom's secret money, maybe, Will, I found something. Maui. 7 days. It's a steal. And we could. Maui? He cut me off, and I heard the frown in his voice. Jess, that's a whole other level. Flights, resort costs, all the tourist traps. We talked about Tahoe, camping under the stars. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. It's us. Maui is for people like your friends. All-inclusive packages and poolside drinks with umbrellas. That's not who we are. Something in me snapped. Whoaroo. Will. The words burst out, sharp and ragged. We're a couple getting married. Maybe who we are is a couple that wants to lie on a beach for a week and not think about budget spreadsheets or who's cooking the damn reception chicken. Maybe who we are is still figuring that out. And it might include a desire for a fucking pina colada. The silence on the line was deafening. I want this one thing. I continued, my voice breaking. I'm giving up my family. My friends think I'm a joke. I'm paying for my own wedding. Can't we have this one thing that feels like a treat? Not just the cheapest possible option? His voice was quiet, wounded. It's not about cheap. It's about values. I don't want that life. Jess, the flashy, materialistic life. I thought you didn't either. I fell in love with a woman who saw through all that. If you need a fancy honeymoon to make this wedding feel valid, then maybe. He trailed off, but the implication hung there. Maybe you're not the woman I thought you were. The fight that followed was our first real one, a low, tense exchange of grievances and fears. He felt I was being seduced by the very world he was rejecting. I felt he was unilaterally defining our shared life as one of aesthetic and financial austerity, with no room for my dreams. However modest they seemed to him. We didn't yell. We spoke in cold, careful sentences that left frostbite. We ended the call with a terse agreement to revisit the honeymoon discussion later. No, I love you. Just silence. That night, alone in my apartment, the envelope of cash from my mother sat on the table like an accusation. I looked at the spreadsheet, at the shrinking number in my checking account. I thought of the free keg, the cousin with the camera, the father who wouldn't be there, and the fiancé who thought wanting a beach was a moral failing. The foundation of our future, built on the dream of simplicity, felt like it was cracking under the weight of all the things we weren't talking about. Shame, expectation, and a gnawing fear that maybe, just maybe, my father and Amber and all the rest were right. Not about Will being a bad person, but about this being a mistake of catastrophic proportions. The wedding was in 3 weeks. The invitations, simple cardstock I'd printed at Kinko's, had been mailed. There was no turning back. All I could do was keep moving forward, hoping the cracks wouldn't split wide open before I walked down the makeshift aisle under that old oak tree. The drive down Interstate 5 was a 5-hour descent into a different reality. The sleek glass and steel of San Francisco bled into suburban sprawl, then into the flat, sun-baked expanse of the Central Valley. Almond orchards lined the highway in neat, military rows, their branches still bare in the late winter light. The air in Will's truck, usually filled with easy conversation or comfortable silence, was thick with tension. My father, Robert, sat stiffly in the passenger seat, his gaze fixed on the passing fields as if they were a personal insult. My mother, Linda, attempted brittle, small talk from the back seat with me and my brother Kevin, who had his headphones on but wasn't playing any music, absorbing everything. Will, behind the wheel, was a study in focused cheerfulness, pointing out landmarks that only underscored our journey into the hinterlands. That's the new processing plant, biggest almond huller in the county, he said. Fascinating, my father muttered, not taking his eyes off the horizon. We're about 20 minutes out, Will added, his tone carefully neutral. I booked you guys rooms at the Best Western in town. It's clean, has a pool. Not staying at the homestead? My father asked, the word dripping with sarcasm. Will's knuckles tightened slightly on the wheel. House is a bit crowded with my brothers in and out. And my folks, they're not really set up for guests. The motel be more comfortable. I saw the look my parents exchanged. They're not set up for guests. Another mark against them. We pulled off the main highway onto a Tulane County road, then onto a well-maintained gravel drive marked by a simple, sun-bleached mailbox that read Anderson. The land opened up. Neat rows of dormant grapevines on one side, almond trees on the other. It was tidy, productive, and modest. The farmhouse came into view. It was a white, Two-story clapboard house with a wide porch. It looked like a house from a Norman Rockwell painting. If the painting had faded after 50 years in the sun, it was charming in a worn, lived-in way, with hydrangea bushes brown for winter by the steps and a tire swing hanging from a massive valley oak. But it wasn't an estate. It was just a nice, old farmhouse. Here we are, Will said, pulling up in front. He seemed to brace himself. The front door opened before we got out of the truck. Will's parents emerged. They matched the house. His father, Joe, was a lean man in crisp, outdated Wranglers and a plaid shirt, his face a roadmap of sun lines. His mother, Marge, wore a floral apron over a simple dress, her gray hair in a soft bun. They smiled, but their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes. They were polite, welcoming, yet there was a strange formality to it, like actors playing a part they'd rehearsed but didn't fully feel. "Welcome, welcome," Marge said, her voice warm but oddly measured. She gave me a hug that was just a bit too brief. "Jessica, dear, so good to finally meet you in person. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling," Joe said, shaking my father's hand with a firm, calloused grip. "Appreciate you making the trip." My father nodded, his own smile a thin, tight line. "Joe, Marge, thank you for having us." We were ushered inside. The interior was cozy, filled with the smell of baking and old wood. The furniture was solid, antique but not antique shop precious. Family photos in simple frames lined the mantel, Will and his brothers as gap-toothed kids. A wedding photo of Joe and Marge that looked straight out of the 70s. It was all perfectly, utterly normal, and that's what felt off. It was too normal, too much like a stage set for quaint farm family. The back door slammed open. "They hear." A booming voice called out. Will's brothers entered. Tom, the oldest, was a larger, louder version of Will, with a handshake that threatened to break bones. "Great to meet you. Heard so much about you all. Jess, you're even prettier than Will said. And he ain't no poet." His joviality was forceful, a performance in itself. Then the twins, Ben and Chad. They were lean, with mischievous grins that seemed permanently affixed. "So you're the city girl who snagged our little brother," Chad said, winking at me. "Hope you're ready for the chaos." "Chaos is our middle name," Ben added, slinging an arm around Chad. "Well, not legally, but it should be." They launched into a story about putting frogs in Will's bed when they were kids. Their banter, rapid fire, filled with slang and exaggerated country accents that sounded practiced. They were playing rowdy farm boys to the hilt. Kevin, watching from the sidelines, smirked. He saw it too. Lunch was served in the cozy dining room. Marge had made a hearty beef stew and homemade bread. The conversation was stilted. "So, Joe," my father began, using his business lunch voice. "You mentioned contract grapes. Who do you sell to?" "Oh, a few of the bigger wineries in Lodi." Joe said, his answer vague. "The market's been good lately." "Lodi? I would have thought Napa, given the proximity." My father pressed, showing off his superficial knowledge of California wine. "Different terroir," Joe said easily, a little too easily. "Our soil's better for the bulk blends." It was a technically correct but evasive answer. My mother tried another angle. "The house is so charming." "Marge, how long has it been in the family?" Marge's smile flickered. "Oh, a good long while. Will's great-grandfather built it." She stood up abruptly. "Who's ready for pie?" I made apple. The tour of the property was next. Will showed us the barn, a classic red structure that was clean and functional, housing some old but well-kept equipment. The famous oak tree for the ceremony was majestic. He pointed out the boundaries of their land, which seemed to blend into neighboring fields without clear distinction. Everything was pleasant, but scaled down. My father's earlier fantasies of a spread seemed to shrink with each step. At one point, Robert pulled me aside near the equipment shed. He lowered his voice, his eyes scanning the tidy yard. You see it, don't you, Jessica? He said, not unkindly, but with a weary certainty. It's a hardscrabble life, a beautiful, honest one, maybe, but it's small. That barn, he nodded toward the red building, is your cathedral. That's the pinnacle. There's no upward mobility here. It's just maintenance. And with 3 other brothers, he'll be fighting over scraps his whole life. Dad, it's not about... It is. He interrupted. It's about stability. It's about providing. He can't provide you the life you're used to, the life you deserve. Look at his parents. Salt of the earth, I'm sure, but they're old, tired. This is their whole world, and it's going to be yours. He put a hand on my shoulder. His final, defeated plea. I'm here. I came, and all it's done is show me I was right. It breaks my heart, but I was right. You're making a mistake. I shook his hand off, tears of frustration pricking my eyes. You're not seeing it. You're only seeing what's not here. I'm seeing what Ishra, he said flatly. And it's not enough. Later, as the sun dipped below the level horizon, casting long shadows across the farmyard, we prepared to leave for the motel. Will walked me to my car. The others had already piled into my parents' sedan. I'm sorry, he said, his voice low. I know that was awkward. My family, they're not used to city people. They get nervous. They were fine, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. It's just a lot. He cupped my face. This is real. Jess, this dirt, this house, that tree. It's not flashy, but it's solid. Our life will be solid. He kissed me, and I tried to pour all my wavering faith into it. But driving behind my parents' taillights into the fading light, the doubt was a cold, hard stone in my gut. The performance of his family, my father's grim validation, the sheer smallness of it all, it collided with the epic, romantic resistance I'd been clinging to. I'd pictured a struggle against snobbery for a hidden treasure. Instead, I was faced with the mundane reality of a nice, lower middle class, farm family. There was no hidden treasure. This was it, at the best Western. I lay on the scratchy comforter in my generic room, staring at the popcorn ceiling. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant hum of the highway. I replayed the day. Marge's too perfect pie, Joe's vague answers, the brothers' cartoonish boisterousness, my father's resigned condemnation. Will's words echoed. This is real. It's solid. But for the first time, the dream of simplicity felt less like a chosen path and more like a narrowing tunnel. The chaos he promised felt staged. The warmth felt manufactured. The solid ground felt like it might be quicksand. I had built an entire future on the idea of escaping a false, materialistic world. Lying in that motel room, a profound and terrifying question whispered in the dark. What if the authenticity I'd run toward was the greatest performance of all? The wedding was in 7 days. There was no turning back. All I could do was walk toward the oak tree and hope, against a rising tide of cold fear, that I wasn't making the worst decision of my life. The morning of my wedding dawned brittle and clear. I sat in the small, musty-smelling back bedroom of the farmhouse, the bridal suite. Marge had called it with a nervous smile. A single mirror was propped on a dresser. My reflection stared back. A stranger, draped in simple, elegant silk. My mother, her eyes red-rimmed but resolute, had helped me into the dress. My father was at the motel, refusing to come until the last possible moment. The absence was a physical weight. You look beautiful, my mother whispered, adjusting the veil, a simple clip of vintage lace she'd worn decades ago. It felt like a surrender, not an heirloom. Does it matter? I asked, the words flat. The hopeful defiance of the past months had calcified into a numb determination. I just had to get through the day, walk down the aisle, a path of flattened grass between folding chairs, say the words, start the life I'd chosen. Outside, I could hear the distant sounds of setup, the clatter of chairs being unloaded from a trailer, the faint twang of a country song from a portable speaker as Tom tested the playlist, Ben and Chad's loud laughter. It sounded less like joyful chaos and more like a tailgate party before a game they weren't invested in. My bridesmaids, Sophia, plus my two quieter friends, Emily and Rachel, fluttered around me, their cheer painfully forced. It's such a unique venue. Jess, Emily said, her gaze darting to the peeling wallpaper. So authentic. Sophia just squeezed my hand, her usual sharp commentary blessedly absent. She saw the dead look in my eyes. There was a knock on the door. It was Kevin. Dad's here, he said, his teenage awkwardness replaced by a somber concern. He's in his suit, meaning he'd shown up. That was something. A small, pathetic ember of hope flickered. Maybe, seeing me like this, he'd understand. The ceremony was set for noon. At 11:45, I was led out of the house, my father waiting on the porch. He looked at me, his jaw working. In his dark suit, he looked like a man attending a corporate funeral. You look very nice, Jessica, he said, the words scraping out. Thank you for coming. Dad, I said I would. He offered his arm, his posture rigid. Let's get this over with. The walk to the ceremony site was a surreal procession through the working part of the farm. We passed the tractor shed, the smell of diesel and old hay in the air. The chosen spot was, as promised, under the majestic valley oak. About 40 folding chairs were set up in a semicircle, half-filled. My side held a sparse collection. My mother, Kevin, a handful of aunts and uncles who decided to brave the trip. My 3 bridesmaids. Will's side was a slightly larger, more boisterous group of people who looked like they'd wandered in from a county fair. Plaid shirts, sun-worn faces, the women in floral dresses that strained at the seams. His family sat in the front row. Joe, Marge, Tom, Ben, Chad. They smiled at me, but the smiles were tight. Their eyes kept flicking toward the driveway. The officiant, a local justice of the peace Will had found, stood under the tree, and there was Will. He turned as I approached, his face breaking into a smile that, for a fleeting second, thawed the ice in my veins. He looked handsome in a new, but still strangely cut, tan suit. His eyes were warm. He looked happy, genuinely happy. It was the only real thing in the whole strange tableau. My father deposited me beside Will, gave a curt nod that was neither a blessing nor a greeting, and took his seat next to my mother. Staring straight ahead, the officiant began, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." The words washed over me. I felt dizzy. I focused on Will's hands, clasping mine. They were warm, solid, real. I told myself, this is real. We got to the vows. Will's voice was clear, earnest. I, William, take you, Jessica, to be my wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse. I opened my mouth to speak my lines. The words were ash on my tongue. That's when we heard it, a distant, rising snarl that cut through the officiant's gentle voice. Not a tractor, not a truck. It was the deep, predatory growl of high-performance engines. Multiple engines, heads turned, down the long gravel driveway. A cloud of dust was approaching, moving fast. Will's hands tightened on mine. I felt a jolt go through him. His smile vanished, replaced by a stark, pale shock. The engines roared closer, resolving into shapes. A sleek, gunmetal gray Porsche 911 led the charge, followed by a blood-red Ferrari, a hulking black Mercedes G-Wagon, and at the rear, a monolithic, silver Rolls-Royce Cullinan. They weren't driving. They were attacking the landscape, tearing up the gravel, scattering chickens. They screeched to a halt in a line at the edge of the field, mere feet from the last row of folding chairs, their engines ticking like bombs in the sudden silence. All pretense of a ceremony was over. The justice of the peace trailed off. his book lowering. Everyone stared. The door of the Rolls-Royce opened. A man in a chauffeur's uniform emerged, moving with robotic precision to open the rear passenger door. Out stepped an old man. He was tall, lean, and wielded a polished black cane, not for support, but as an extension of his will. His hair was a sweep of silver, his face a mask of aristocratic displeasure carved from granite. He wore a suit so impeccably tailored it seemed to reject the very dust in the air. His eyes, a glacial blue, swept over the scene, the folding chairs, the portable speaker, the guests in their Walmart best, me in my simple dress, Will in his ill-fitting suit, with an expression of utter, profound contempt. He didn't walk, he processed. His cane punctuated each step on the hard earth as he strode directly toward us. His chauffeur and another severe-looking man in a dark suit falling in behind him. The wedding guests parted before him like the Red Sea. He stopped before the justice of the peace. Without a word, he reached out and plucked the leather-bound book from the man's hands. The officiant was too stunned to protest. The old man turned his gaze on Will. His voice, when he spoke, wasn't loud. It was dry, cold, and carried with the cutting force of a scalpel. William, this charade has gone on long enough. Will's face was bone-white. Grandfather. He choked out. The word was a gasp. Grandfather. A collective, audible intake of breath rustled through the crowd. You were given a year. The old man continued, his tone conversational, yet devastating. A year to sow your wild oats, to play at being common, to conduct your childish little social experiment in squalor. I indulged you, but to bring it to this, to involve an innocent bystander in this theatrical poverty? His eyes flicked to me, and I felt scanned, catalogued, and dismissed. It ends now. He turned to address the stunned audience, his voice projecting. My apologies for the interruption. My name is William Alexander Van Derwin III. This foolish boy, he jerked his cane toward Will, who flinched, is my grandson and heir, William Alexander Van Derwin IV. This, his cane made a slow, sweeping arc that encompassed the entire horizon, is not a family farm. This is Silver Oak Vale, 650 acres of the most coveted Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon terroir in Napa Valley. That quaint farmhouse is a caretaker's cottage. The main house, he pointed his cane toward a wooded hillock to the north, invisible from where we stood, is through those trees. This rustic venue you're standing in is part of a vineyard that produces bottles which retail for upwards of $400. The silence was absolute, profound. You could hear the breeze in the oak leaves. My father shot to his feet, his face a grotesque canvas of disbelief, dawning comprehension, and a horrifying, greedy hope. Will found his voice, desperate, pleading. Grandfather, stop. Jessica, please, let me explain. Explain what? The old man cut him off, his voice cracking like a whip. How you lied to this woman for a year. How you used her and her family as props in your ridiculous quest to prove you could be loved for yourself. A quest funded by the very trust fund you pretend to despise? He turned back to me, and for the first time, his expression held something akin to pity, which was infinitely worse than contempt. Young woman, you have my sincerest apologies. You were an unwitting participant in a bet between a spoiled boy and his exasperated grandfather. The wager was that he could live for 1 year without access to his inheritance, without his name, and find genuine connection. He seems to have mistaken your affection for a winning ticket. Each word was a nail driven into my chest. I looked at Will. His eyes were wide with panic, with a desperate need for me to understand. Jess, it wasn't like that. I do love you. It started as something else, but it became real. I was going to tell you. After today, I was going to tell you everything. After today, my voice was a stranger's, thin and shredded. After I married you, that was your plan. to let me walk into this Lithia is a punchline. It's not a punchline. This, he gestured wildly at the land. The sky. This is all real. It's mine. Ours. Thesis real? I laughed. A brittle, horrible sound. Thesis a game. A social experiment. My father was right. My friends were right. I wasn't choosing a simpler life. I was the star idiot in your rich boy's fantasy. The numbness was incinerated by a white-hot rage. I looked at Joe and Marge, who were staring at the ground. And you? His parents. The woman, Marge, looked up, her face etched with genuine shame. We're the estate managers, miss. The Parkers. We've looked after William since he was a boy. He asked us to play a part. Tom, Ben, and Chad, the brothers, shuffled their feet. Tom spoke, his earlier boisterousness gone. We're friends from Stanford. Jess, he paid us to be here, to sell the story. We're sorry. It got out of hand. The final layer of the fiction peeled away, leaving raw, humiliated flesh. I looked at the man I was about to marry, the man who sold commercial refrigeration, the man from the farm. He had never existed. I yanked my hand from his. The simple solitaire diamond felt like a brand. With a cry of pure fury, I pulled it off my finger. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was a spasm of disgust. I didn't throw it at him. I dropped it. It fell into the dust at his feet. A tiny, worthless sparkle in the dirt. You wanted someone to love you for yourself? I said, my voice trembling but clear. The problem is, you never showed me yourself. You showed me a character, a poorly written character in a stupid, cruel play. I turned to my parents. My mother was sobbing silently into her hands. My father was just staring, his mind visibly recalculating the entire universe. Take me home. Please, get me out of here. As I turned to walk away, Will made a move to follow. Jessica, wait. His grandfather's cane shot out, barring his path. Let her go. William, you've done enough damage. He looked at me, then at my shell-shocked family. My driver will take you wherever you need to go. Again, my apologies for my grandson's appalling lack of judgment. I didn't look back. I walked past the rows of gawking guests, past the line of million-dollar cars, past the life I thought I was choosing and into the cold, empty reality of a lie. The silk of my wedding dress, once a symbol of simple elegance, now felt like a costume for the world's most pathetic joke. I climbed into the back of the idling Rolls-Royce, my mother and brother following numbly. My father paused, looking back at the scene, at the imposing figure of William Van Derwin III, a strange, calculating light beginning to dawn in his eyes. Then he got in. The door closed with a soft, definitive thud, sealing me in silent, leather-lined luxury. As the car pulled away, the last thing I saw through the tinted window was Will, standing alone under the giant oak, his figure growing smaller and smaller, surrounded by the vast, beautiful, deceitful vineyard he called home. The silent, leather-lined interior of the Rolls-Royce was a sarcophagus. I stared straight ahead, seeing nothing. My mother's soft weeping was the only sound. Kevin sat rigid, his teenage worldview shattered alongside mine. My father, in the front passenger seat, was eerily quiet, his head turned to watch the Napa Valley landscape, the real landscape, of manicured vineyards and gated drives, slide past the window. The chauffeur, a man of polished granite, finally spoke as we merged onto the highway toward the city. Mr. Van Derwin has instructed me to take you to your residence of choice. Alternatively, a suite at the Fairmont has been arranged. Should you require it, just take us home, my father said, his voice not his own. It was a voice calculating, reassessing. Our home in Glen Park. The ride was a blur of shame. My wedding dress, once a symbol of my chosen simplicity, was now a grotesque costume. I felt the silk like a prison. I wanted to tear it off, to burn it. The car pulled up to my parents' house. The normalcy of the trimmed lawn, the neighbor walking his dog, was an assault. The chauffeur handed my father a discreet, thick ivory card. My direct line: Sir, Mr. Van Derwin III wished to extend his personal assurance that any inconveniences will be addressed. My father took the card, his fingers closing around it as if it were a winning lottery ticket. Thank you, he said, the obsequiousness in his tone making me nauseous. Inside, the dam broke. My mother collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing in earnest. My poor baby, that monster, that lying, filthy rich monster. I just stood in the middle of the living room, the dress pooling around me. I need to get out of this, I mumbled, and walked like a sleepwalker to my old bedroom. Changing into sweatpants and a t-shirt felt like shedding a skin, but the humiliation was tattooed underneath. I sat on the bed, my mind a white noise scream. The knock on the door was gentle. It was Kevin. Hey, he said, leaning against the doorframe. He looked older. That was the most messed up thing I've ever seen. A choked laugh escaped me. Yeah, for what it's worth. I'm sorry, and I think you're handling it better than Mom or him. He nodded toward the living room. Downstairs, I could hear the beginnings of the new reality. Do you have any idea what this means, Linda? My father's voice was a hushed, fervent whisper. Van Derwin, the Van Derwins of Silver Oak Vale. Their estate is worth more than this entire block. The old man gave me his personal card. Robert, our daughter's heart is broken. My mother cried. And that's terrible. It is. But that boy is the heir. Maybe this isn't the end. Maybe this is a test. A blip. If Jessica plays her cards right, this could be the best thing that ever happened to her. To all of us. I walked to the top of the stairs, cold fury cutting through the numbness. Play my cards right? My voice echoed in the stairwell. They both looked up, startled. My fiancé, a fictional person, by the way, humiliated me in front of everyone I know as part of the bet. And you're talking about playing my cards right? My father had the decency to look abashed, but only for a second. Jessica, be rational. The man is a billionaire, or will be. This was a stupid stunt, yes, but the foundation, the reality, is still there. He clearly has feelings for you. The old man himself apologized. He didn't apologize to me. I spat. He apologized for his grandson's bad manners, like he'd tracked mud on a priceless rug. I was the rug. Dad, I was the inconvenience. I turned and went back to my room, slamming the door. The first of many doors I'd slam in the coming days. The next morning, the digital world descended. My phone, which I'd kept off, buzzed to life with a vengeance when I finally plugged it in. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of texts and notifications. The news had broken. A gossip site had it first. Napa Valley Prince's pauper prank. Airplay's farmer. Fool City Bride. The article was a salacious mix of half-truths and snark, featuring a grainy, long-lens photo of me in my dress facing while under the oak tree, and another of the line of supercars. My name, Jessica Sterling, was in the third paragraph. My professional LinkedIn photo was used. The texts were a gut-punch chorus. Sophia, OMG Jess, just saw the news. Are you okay? Call me, sent 14 times. Amber, Jessica, honey, we're all just so shocked. We knew something was off. Let's do lunch and you can tell us everything. My treat. The glee was palpable beneath the faux concern. Chloe, thinking of you. So awful. But Silver Oak Vale? That's, like, incredible wine. Maybe some good will come of it? Colleagues from work. Vague, awkward messages of support that were really just probes for information. I didn't respond to any of them. I couldn't. The doorbell rang. My mother answered. I heard the murmur of voices, then the sound of the door closing. She came upstairs, her face pale. Reporters, 2 of them, from one of those websites. I sent them away. The world had shrunk to the 4 walls of my childhood bedroom, and even they felt porous, exposed. My father had gone to work, but I knew he was fielding calls, probably showing off the Van Derwin business card. My mother hovered, a nervous ghost. The physical manifestations of the lie began arriving. A massive bouquet of 24 blood red roses was delivered at noon. The card read, "Jessica, there are no words. Just know my feelings were, and are, real. Please, let me explain. All my love." Well, I told my mother to throw them out. She did, but I saw her glance at the florist's name, a famously expensive one in Union Square. An hour later, a uniformed courier arrived with a small, robin's egg blue box from Tiffany. Inside, on a bed of velvet, was a necklace, a diamond pendant in the shape of a tiny, perfect oak leaf. I didn't even read the card. I snapped the box shut. "Send it back. Jessica, it's beautiful," my mother said, her voice trembling. "It's a prop in a different scene." I said flatly, "Send it back." My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize, but with a Napa area code. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, my screen showed a new voicemail. I played it on speaker, my hands trembling. Will's voice, raw and strained, filled the room. "Jess, God, please pick up. Please. I know you hate me. You have every right to. What I did, it was idiotic. It was arrogant. It was cruel. But you have to believe me. It stopped being an experiment months ago. I fell in love with you, the real you, and I was terrified that if you knew the real me, you'd turn into one of them, the people at that mixer. I was going to tell you, today, after we were married. I thought it would be a happy surprise, a fairy tale ending. I see now how stupid that was, how patronizing. Please, just talk to me. I'm outside your parents' house. I'm not leaving until you talk to me." I rushed to the window, parked across the street. Looking absurdly out of place was the dusty Ford pickup. Will was leaning against the hood, his head in his hands. He looked up, as if sensing me, his face a mask of anguish. My mother gasped, "He's here, a part of me, the part that had loved the refrigerator salesman, twisted in agony, the larger part, the part that had been publicly stripped bare, hardened into ice." I grabbed my phone, my fingers flying. I didn't call. I texted, "Me. Go away." His phone lit up in his hand. He stared at it, then typed frantically, "Will, no, not until you hear me out. Face to face. Me. I have nothing to say to you. You are a stranger. Leave, or I will call the police and tell them William Van Derwin IV is stalking me. I'm sure the headlines will love that." I saw him flinch, as if struck. He looked at the house, at my window, for a long, painful minute. Then he slowly got back into the truck. He didn't drive away immediately. He just sat there, a silhouette of defeat. After what felt like an eternity, the engine turned over, and he pulled slowly from the curb. That's when the shaking started. Full body, uncontrollable tremors. The finality of it. I had just banished the man I loved, or the idea of him. The distinction was too painful to make. The doorbell rang again. My mother, wringing her hands, went to answer. I heard a male voice, calm, unfamiliar. "Mrs. Sterling? My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm a journalist with Venice Magazine. I was at the event yesterday. I wonder if I might speak with Jessica for a moment. It's important. A journalist. Of course." I marched down the stairs, ready to scream at him to get off our property. He stood in the doorway, not trying to push in. He was in his 30s, with kind, intelligent eyes and no camera in sight. He held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Jessica, I'm not here for a quote, and I'm not with the tabloids. I was at Silver Oak Vale doing a feature on their library of rare vintages. I was in the main house when everything happened. I saw it, all of it. So you got a great story. Congratulations," I said, my voice hollow. "No," he said, his gaze steady. I got sick to my stomach, and then I remembered something. He reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small, professional digital recorder. I was doing an interview earlier in the day with the head viticulturist. I forgot to turn it off. I had it in my breast pocket when I walked down to see what the commotion was about 20 minutes before the ceremony. He held it out. I reviewed the audio this morning. There's a conversation on here between Will and his friend Tom. It happens just before you arrived at the site. I think you need to hear it. Not for a story. For you. I stared at the recorder. It looked like a tiny black coffin. My mother looked at me, her eyes wide. Jessica. I took the recorder. Why? I asked Daniel. Why bring this to me? He met my eyes. Because what he did was shitty. And because sometimes, the truth, no matter how ugly, is the only thing that can help you start putting the pieces back together. Listen to it. After that, if you never want to see me again, I'll leave. But I thought you deserved to have the full picture. He gave a slight nod, then turned and walked back to his sensible Subaru parked at the curb. I took the recorder upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. I closed the bedroom door. I sat on the edge of the bed. I pressed play. There was the muffled sound of footsteps on gravel, rustling fabric. Then Tom's voice, clear and laughing, came through. Nervous. Brother? Will's voice, tight but excited. Shut up. You'd be nervous too. This is it. The big reveal. You really think she's gonna be happy? Or just pissed as hell? A pause. Will's voice, lighter now, tinged with the same glib charm I'd fallen for. But now it curdled in my ears. Are you kidding? Once she gets over the initial shock, once she sees the house, the cellar, the bank accounts, she'll faint. Then she'll realize she hit the jackpot. It's the ultimate plot twist. My grandpa's gonna have an aneurysm, which is just a bonus. But Jess, she wanted simple and real. I'm about to give her a reality so big and shiny. She won't know what hit her. It's gonna be epic. Tom's laugh. You're a madman. I still can't believe you pulled off a whole year as will the freezer salesman. Worth it, Will said, his voice dripping with smug satisfaction. Worth it to see the look on her face today. It's going to be priceless. The recording ended. The smug, glib satisfaction in his voice. The ultimate plot twist. She'll realize she hit the jackpot. It's going to be epic. He hadn't been planning a heartfelt confession. He'd been planning a grand, dramatic reveal. My pain, my confusion, my family's humiliation. It was all part of the entertainment. The climax of his epic year-long prank. The last fragile thread holding my heart together snapped. The love, the hurt, the betrayal, it all crystallized into something cold, hard, and clear. Pure, undiluted contempt. The numbness was gone. In its place was a sharp, focused rage. He hadn't just lied. He'd turned my love, my integrity, my struggle, into the punchline of his private joke. And he'd been ex-aeteto deliberate. I looked at the recorder in my hand. Daniel was right. This was the truth. Ugly, undeniable, and mine. It wasn't a gift. It was a weapon. And for the first time since the oak tree, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman who had just been handed the means to fight back. The cold, clear rage that followed the recording was a better companion than the numb shock. It was fuel. It kept me from dissolving into the sobbing heap everyone expected. I didn't cry. I moved. The first thing I did was make a copy of Daniel's audio file. I saved it to the cloud, to a hard drive, to a USB stick I wore around my neck like a warrior's talisman. It was my truth, my proof. The world outside my room, however, continued to be a circus of the grotesque. My father, Robert Sterling, underwent a transformation so complete it was psychological whiplash. The man who had threatened disownment now spoke of the Van Derwins with a reverent, proprietary air. He cornered me in the kitchen 2 days after the disaster. Jessica, we need to be strategic about this. He began, pouring himself a coffee he didn't need. I've been in touch with Mr. Van Derwin's office. A very discreet, very senior associate. You did what? I was loading the dishwasher, clattering plates to keep my hands from shaking. Damage control, he said, as if it were obvious, and opportunity assessment. The old man is clearly contrite. He wants to make this right. There's talk of a settlement, a goodwill gesture. I stopped, a greasy frying pan in my hand. A settlement? For what? Emotional distress? Are you suggesting I sue the love of my life for fraudulent courtship? He's not the love of your life. He's a spoiled brat who played a con. My father snapped, then lowered his voice, leaning in. But he's a billionaire spoiled brat. His family wants this to go away. Quietly, we have leverage. We could ensure your future is secure. A down payment on a house here in the city. Graduate school. Anything you want. The sheer, naked avarice in his eyes turned my stomach. So, what? I was supposed to marry him for money. But since that blew up, we just extort the money directly? Is that the playing my cards right you mentioned? It's not extortion. It's restitution. He insisted. They owe you. They publicly humiliated you. This is how the world works. Jessica, you turn misfortune into advantage. My misfortune is not your business opportunity. I said, my voice low and deadly. You don't get to monetize my heartbreak. Stay out of it. He scoffed, shaking his head. You're still thinking with your heart. Start thinking with your head. That recording your journalist friend gave you? That's not just a memento. That's a weapon. A very valuable one. I slammed the dishwasher shut. It's mine, and I will decide what to do with it. Meanwhile, the offers poured in. Not just from Will, more flowers, more jewels, a handwritten letter delivered by a lawyer that I burned unread. But from the media, everyone wanted the jilted Napa bride exclusive. A sleazy TV talk show offered a safe space to tell your story. A tabloid offered 6 figures for photos and my diary. My voicemail was full of producers' pitches. I deleted them all. My silence, however, only fueled the speculation. The narrative in the gossip columns hardened. I was either a gold digger who'd gotten a tantalizingly close sniff of money, or a pathetic rube too broken to speak. I hated both versions. It was Daniel, again, who provided the sane path forward. He called a week after his first visit. I'm not asking for an interview, he said immediately, but I have a friend, Eleanor Vance. She's a lawyer, not a celebrity divorce shark, but she specializes in high net worth reputation management and, well, situations where there's a profound power imbalance and emotional manipulation. She's ethical. She might be able to help you navigate this. Just talk to her. Exhausted, feeling adrift. I agreed. Eleanor Vance was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with a no-nonsense demeanor and a conference room with a view of the bay that felt intentionally neutral. Jessica, she said, after I'd haltingly told the story, the recorder between us on the table. You have no interest in a financial settlement, correct? Correct. I don't want their money. I want to not be a joke. Then we don't sue. A lawsuit would drag this out for years, keep you tied to him, and in the end, they have deeper pockets and would likely settle to make it go away anyway, which would make you look like what your father is suggesting. She tapped a pen on her legal pad. What we can do is control the narrative. You have the ultimate leverage, the truth, and the moral high ground, which, in the court of public opinion, is sometimes more powerful than a legal ruling. What does that mean? It means we go on the offensive, but on your terms. We draft a statement, not for the tabloids. We release it to the AP, the Chronicle, Forbes even, a clear, factual, unemotional account. We frame his actions for what they are, a prolonged, premeditated deception, a social experiment that constitutes emotional fraud. We use his own grandfather's words against him. We don't ask for anything. We simply state what happened and its impact. Then, you publish something longer form, an article, a first-person piece about identity, trust, and the casual cruelty of wealth. Noche sobi story. I think peace. I think peace? I echoed, skeptical. You're a marketing professional. Eleanor said, a faint smile touching her lips. You know how to shape a message. Use those skills. Right now. You're a victim in a salacious story. Reframe it. Make yourself the expert witness in a larger cultural critique. It takes the power back, and it makes it very, very hard for William Van Derwin IV to ever be seen as anything other than what he is. A shallow, reckless boy. The idea was a lifeline. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. I worked with Eleanor on the statement. It was brutal in its simplicity. My engagement to William Anderson was built on a complete fabrication. For over a year, I was led to believe I was in a relationship with a man of modest means and simple values, while he was in fact conducting what his family has termed a social experiment. My sincere emotions, and the strain it placed on my own family, were used as unknowing test subjects in this endeavor. The public manner of the deception's unraveling has been deeply traumatizing. While I seek no financial compensation, I believe it is important to label this behavior for what it is: emotional fraud. The profound breach of trust and the objectification of genuine human connection for personal amusement is unacceptable, regardless of wealth or status. We released it. The fallout was immediate and different. The snarky blogs quieted. The Chronicle ran a piece titled, Napa Airs, Prank, Rice Questions of Consent and Emotional Abuse. Forbes had a column on the ethical vacuum of trust fund experiments. The tide of public opinion, ever fickle, began to turn. I was no longer a punchline, I was a case study. Then, I wrote the article. I wrote about the loneliness of city life that made simple so seductive. I wrote about the subtle condescension of my friends and family, and the sickening irony that their worst fears had come true in a way they never imagined. I wrote about the erosion of self-trust. How do you ever believe your own judgment again? I focused on the mechanics of the lie, the sustained performance, and the absolute privilege required to treat another person's heart as a laboratory. I submitted it anonymously to Daniel's magazine, Vinus, but the details were unmistakable. They published it online under the headline, The Vintage of Deceit, on being the unwitting subject in a rich man's reality. It went viral in a way the gossip never had. The emails started flooding the magazine's editorial address, not from reporters, but from readers, women who'd been lied to about finances, about marriages, about identities, people who felt seen. The comments were filled with, "This isn't just about money. It's about power. And thank you for giving words to this." Will's response was a series of increasingly desperate, rambling emails to my personal address, which I forwarded to Eleanor. His grandfather's response was more effective. William Van Derwin IV was reportedly traveling abroad and focusing on family business interests in Europe. A polite exile. The Van Derwin PR machine was in overdrive, but they couldn't fight the framing of emotional fraud. It stuck. One evening, as I was finally beginning to look at apartments, I couldn't stay at my parents'. Not with my father's new obsession, Daniel called. The piece was incredible, he said. His voice was warm, devoid of pity, brave, and smart. It's starting a real conversation. Thanks. And thanks for the lawyer referral. Eleanor is a pit bull in a pantsuit. She is. He paused. Listen, I know this is the last thing you need, but I'm heading up to Sonoma tomorrow to visit a small, family-run Pinot producer. No drama, no castles, just two brothers who love dirt and grapes. I have to interview them. I thought, if you're not sick of the wine country and want to see what the real thing looks like, you could come. As a palate cleanser. No pressure. Just a drive. I was silent for a long moment. The idea of setting foot back in wine country made my skin crawl. But the idea of seeing the real thing, as he put it, and the idea of spending time with someone who had seen me at my worst and handed me a tool instead of a platitude. Just a drive. I echoed. Just a drive. He confirmed. I went. We didn't talk much about Will. We talked about soil composition, about the struggle of small growers against the conglomerates, about the difference between terroir and branding. I watched the two brothers, their hands permanently stained with earth, argue passionately about oak barrels versus concrete eggs. It was real. It was unpretentious. It was the anti-silver oak veil. On the drive back, as the sun set over the golden hills, Daniel said, "You know, in the wine world, sometimes the most profound vintages come from the most stressed vines. The struggle forces the roots deeper, makes the character more complex." I looked out the window, the first semblance of peace I'd felt in weeks settling over me. The anchor of that damning recording had stopped my drift. The action of writing, of speaking my truth, had given me a direction. I wasn't healed. The wound was still raw and massive. But for the first time, I wasn't just floating in the aftermath. I was beginning, tentatively, to swim. My father, seeing the positive press and my newfound steel, backed off his settlement talk, though I'd catch him looking at me with a new, confused respect. The media found fresher scandals. Will's emails dwindled to a stop. I was alone, but I was no longer a spectacle. I was a woman who had been shattered, and was now, piece by painful piece, gathering the fragments. And some of those fragments, I was starting to realize, were sharper and stronger than they'd ever been before. The quiet after the storm was a new kind of sound. It wasn't the silence of shock, but the purposeful quiet of a workshop after the blueprints are drawn. The viral article hadn't just given me a voice, it had given me a strange, unwanted currency, expertise in betrayal. I started getting emails, not just from readers, but from junior publicists, branding consultants, even a sociology professor asking if I'd speak to her class. The world wanted to dissect the Van Derwin phenomenon, and I was the primary source. I ignored the speaking requests, but one email, forwarded by Daniel, caught my eye. It was from a woman named Claire, who ran a tiny, struggling family winery in Sonoma. She'd read my article. "You wrote about the difference between the story and the substance that you wrote. That's our daily battle. The big guys have the story, the castles, the legacy. We have the substance, our hands in the dirt, our name on every bottle, but no one hears us. We can't afford their marketing." It sparked an idea, a dangerous, thrilling idea. But first, there was unfinished business. Will had finally resurfaced, not with flowers or jewels, but with a single, terse email requesting a meeting. "I'm back. I need to see you, just to talk. I'll come to you, anywhere you want. No games. Eleanor, my lawyer, advised against it. It serves no legal purpose and could be emotionally volatile." Daniel was more nuanced. "You might need it," he said over coffee at a quiet spot in the Mission. "Not for him. For you. To look the ghost in the eye and see that it's just a man. A flawed, stupid man." I chose neutral ground, a public park in Sausalito, on a bench overlooking the bay. It was a gray, windy day. I arrived first. I wore no armor, just jeans and a sweater. I wasn't trying to impress him anymore. He arrived on foot, looking thinner, older. The easy charm was sandblasted away, leaving something raw and anxious. He didn't try to hug me. He just stood there for a moment. "You came," he said. "I'm here. You have 20 minutes. He sat on the far end of the bench, a careful foot of space between us. The wind whipped his hair. "I read your article," he began, his voice rough. "It was brutal and fair." I said nothing. "I was sent to Tuscany," he continued, staring at his hands, "to oversee a new import venture. It was exile. My grandfather, he's not angry about what I did to you. Not really. He's furious I got caught, that I made the family name a laughingstock in the wrong circles. Your article, that emotional fraud line, it got under his skin. It's bad for business." "Good," I said, the word flat. He flinched. "I deserve that." He took a deep breath. "I'm not here to make excuses. There are none. I'm here to say you were right. About everything. It was a game. A selfish, arrogant game. I convinced myself it was a quest for authenticity. But it was just a costume party. And you? You were the only real thing in it. And I ruined that. He finally looked at me. His eyes haunted. The things I said on that recording. God, hearing it from your perspective, I sounded like a monster. A clueless, entitled monster. I wasn't excited to trick you, Jessica. I was terrified. I was excited for the spectacle, for the big moment where all the pressure would be off and I could just be with you, as myself, with everything out in the open. But I was too cowardly to do it the right way. So I engineered a traumatic, public unveiling and called it a grand gesture. It was the act of a child. The apology was better crafted than his earlier pleas. It sounded practiced. Maybe it was. Maybe he'd been in therapy. It didn't matter. Why did you do it? I asked. Not the why of the experiment, but the deeper why. Why me? Was I just conveniently naive? The right mix of city girl disillusioned and romantic? No. The word burst from him. No. You are the most genuine person I'd ever met. You saw me, Will Anderson, and you loved him. That was the drug. For the first time in my life, someone loved me without the filter of the Van Derwin name, the money, the expectation. I got addicted to it, and instead of coming clean, I just kept taking more. I was a love junkie, and you were my pure, uncut supply. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me, and it changed nothing. I believe you, I said quietly. I believe you were addicted to the version of yourself you created for me. But that's not love, Will. That's narcissism. You loved the reflection, not the person holding the mirror. He looked like I'd struck him. He nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I know that now. He paused. He's cutting me off. You know, grandfather. Not completely, but the leash is very short. The heir title is on probation. He's talking about putting the estate in a trust, bringing in professional management. My little experiment cost me my birthright. A part of me, the part that had loved the humble farmer, wanted to feel sympathy. The larger, harder part felt only a cold justice. You gambled with my heart and lost your inheritance. Seems like the stakes were appropriately high. A harsh, humorless laugh escaped him. Yeah, they were. He stood up, shoving his hands in his pockets. I won't bother you again. I needed you to know that I am sorry. Not because I got caught, not because of the bad press, but because I hurt you, the real you, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. He started to walk away, then turned back. For what it's worth, the man you fell in love with, the one who liked cheap tacos and hated pretentious people, he was in there. He's just buried under a century of other people's expectations and my own stupidity. You helped me find him, and then I blew it up. He gave a final, weary nod. Goodbye, Jessica. I watched him walk away, his figure growing smaller against the vast, gray expanse of the bay. The ghost was just a man, a sad, diminished man walking into a gilded cage of his own making. I felt no triumph, no burning hatred, just a vast, empty space where a future used to be. And in that emptiness, a strange sense of release. The meeting did what Daniel said it would. It made him human, and in making him human, it made his actions unforgivable in a mundane, rather than mythical, way. He wasn't a villain in a fairy tale. He was a rich, messed up guy who did a terrible thing. The scales fell from my eyes. Finally and completely, the energy I'd spent on anger, on grief, on simply surviving the fallout, was now free. I poured it into the idea Claire's email had sparked. I met with Daniel again. I want to start a company, I said, laying out my laptop in his modest apartment. A marketing and event consultancy, but hyper niche, for wineries like Claire's, the small, authentic, family-run places in Napa and Sonoma who have incredible product but get drowned out by the silver oak villas of the world. I know how to craft a narrative. I just livied a masterclass in false narratives. I can help them tell their true story, not as a cheaper alternative, but as the premium choice for people who care about substance over spectacle. Daniel listened, his eyes lighting up with professional interest. It's a great angle. Post Van Derwin. Your name actually carries a kind of credibility in that world. You're the whistleblower on bullshit. That's what I was thinking. I could curate experiences, tiny, immersive tours, harvest dinners in the actual family kitchen, interviews with the winemakers. No castles, no faux European grandeur, just dirt, passion, and good wine. And I could write the content, Daniel said, leaning forward. Profiles, the stories behind the labels. My magazine would probably commission some of it. We could partner. We, the word hung in the air, charged with new possibility. We spent the next few weeks building a business plan. I used the last of my savings and a small, fiercely defended loan for my mother, my father, seeing a legitimate business venture, offered money I refused, to secure a tiny office space in Healdsburg, in the heart of Sonoma. I called it Root Vine Collective. Our first client was Claire. We didn't redesign her label. We filmed her 70-year-old father explaining why he still handpicks a certain row. We wrote copy about the glacial soil that made their Chardonnay taste like wet stones and lime. Daniel published a piece in Venus titled The Quiet Revolution, Finding Truth in a Glass. It got noticed. Other wineries called. 6 months after the park bench, I was in my office, scheduling a harvest luncheon for a 3-generation Zinfandel producer. When my phone buzzed, it was a number from New York. Forbes. They wanted to do a short piece on entrepreneurs turning personal brand crises into business opportunities. I laughed. A real, unburdened sound. I agreed. When the reporter asked about my inspiration, I didn't mention Will. I talked about Claire. I talked about the difference between a brand and a legacy. I talked about roots. After the call, I leaned back in my chair. Through the window, I could see the sun setting over the vineyard-covered hills, painting them in shades of gold and purple. This wasn't the life I'd planned. It was harder, lonelier in many ways, and built on the ashes of my old self. But it was mine, forged in fire, shaped by my own hands. The ghost of Will Anderson, of William Van Derwin IV, no longer haunted me. He was just a footnote in the origin story of a woman who finally learned how to trust her own taste in wine and in life. The reckoning was over. The rebuilding had begun. 6 months after the Forbes article, Root Vine Collective wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Our client list had grown to a curated 12 wineries, each one a gem of authenticity. We didn't do ad buys, we crafted stories. We hosted dinners for 50, not 500, where the winemaker sat at the head of the table and told stories of failed vintages and lucky breaks. My past, once a source of shame, had become an odd credential. I was the authenticity litmus test. If I believed in a story, so did our discerning clientele. The phone in my Healdsburg office rang. It was Daniel. You're coming to the Taste of Terroir event at Les Jardins tonight, right? Les Jardins was a stunning, modern event space at a small, prestigious winery we'd just signed. I have to. I'm hosting the damn thing, I said, smiling. It was our biggest event yet, a walk-around tasting featuring all 12 of our wineries. A statement. Good. Or something that says, I built this, not I survived that. See you there. I did. I wore a simple, emerald green dress that spoke of confidence, not cost. As I moved through the elegant, lantern-lit courtyard of Les Jardins, a sense of profound calm settled over me. The air hummed with genuine conversation, not the networking drone of that long-ago tech mixer. Here, people talked about malolactic fermentation and rootstock, not IPOs. I circulated, greeting the family winemakers by name, introducing guests. Jessica, over here. It was Claire, waving me over to her table. She was pouring for a sommelier from a Michelin-starred San Francisco restaurant. Jessica is the secret sauce, Claire told him, beaming. She made people listen. Later, near a fire pit, I found Daniel chatting with the elderly patriarch of the Zinfandel vineyard. The old man was gesturing wildly, telling a story about outrunning a wild boar in the 1970s. Daniel caught my eye and grinned, his notebook forgotten on his lap. This was the work. Not spin, not fiction, amplification. The event was a palpable success. As the crowd began to thin, I stole a moment on a quiet terrace overlooking the moonlit vines, a glass of Claire's citrus-kissed Albarino in my hand. This was my life, built on truth, however hard-won. Jessica. The voice came from behind me. I knew it instantly. It was older, wearier, but unmistakable. I didn't turn immediately. I took a slow sip of wine, letting the crisp acidity ground me, then turned. Will stood a few feet away. He looked different. The tan suit was gone, replaced with dark, well-fitting jeans and a simple, expensive-looking charcoal sweater. The entitled gleam was extinguished. He looked grounded and tired. This is a private event, I said, my voice calm, administrative. I know. I'm a guest of the Kerrigans. He nodded toward the old Zinfandel maker inside. I've been learning. From the ground up, literally. I manage 5 acres of their old vine plot now. It's part of my probation. So the rumors were true. The heir had been sent to the fields. I'm not here to make a scene, he said quickly, seeing my expression. I've been here for an hour, watching you. What you've built, it's incredible. I read the Forbes piece, turning brand crisis into business. Ouch. It's the truth. I know. He took a hesitant step closer. The space between us felt vast. I needed to see you, one last time, to say a few things I didn't get right in Sausalito. Will, I don't. Please. 2 minutes. Then I walk out that gate and you never have to see me again. You have my word. I nodded once, curtly. My armor was on, but it was light, comfortable armor now. What I did to you was unforgivable. He began, his gaze direct, not pleading. I've spent every day since then trying to understand why. So I can guarantee I'll never be that person again. The therapy, the grunt work in the vineyard, it's not punishment. It's excavation. And you were right. The man you fell in love with, the one who liked simple things, who hated pretense he was in there. But he was a ghost, a fantasy I had of who I might be without the weight of my name. You made him feel real, but he wasn't. Not yet. He looked out at the vines, silver in the moonlight. The man I am now, he's getting there. He gets up at 4:30 a.m. His back aches. His hands are permanently stained. He argues with the Kerrigans about irrigation schedules. He's nobody's heir. He's just a farm manager. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm earning something, building something that's mine. Not an inheritance, but a skill, a respect. He turned his gaze back to me. It was clear, honest. You said I stole the possibility of a real life with you. You were right, but you were also wrong. If I had been who I pretended to be, a simple guy with a small farm and 3 brothers, what could I have given you? A life of real struggle. Maybe we'd be happy, maybe not, but I couldn't have given you this. He gestured to the event behind me, to the sense of purpose that radiated from it. This company, this vision, it was forged in the fire of what I did. I hate that I was the fire, but I can't hate the steel it made you. And I can't pretend that the man I was pretending to be would have ever been enough to help you become this. His words hung in the cool air. They weren't an apology. They were an analysis. And they were startlingly perceptive. You're saying your betrayal was a perverse gift? I asked, my tone flat. No. God, no. It was a crime. I'm saying the universe took my crime and you created something beautiful from the wreckage. Something that never would have existed otherwise. The Will Anderson you loved couldn't have given you the tools to build Root Vine. Only William Van Derwin IV, by being the villain in your story, could do that. The irony is, it's the first genuinely useful thing I've ever done. I stared at him, the truth of it settling in my bones. The man I'd loved was a phantom. The man who'd hurt me was real. And the person I was now was built in the crucible between those two poles. I didn't owe him gratitude, but I could, finally, relinquish the last of my hatred. It was just data, a painful, essential part of my history. I don't hate you anymore, Will, I said, and realized it was true. But I don't forgive you, either. You're a chapter, a devastating, formative chapter, but the story is mine now, and it's a good one. He nodded, a profound sadness and acceptance in his eyes. That's all I wanted to hear, that the story goes on, and that it's good. He took a deep breath, as if letting go of something heavy. Goodbye, Jessica. I truly hope you have an extraordinary life. Goodbye, Will. He turned and walked away, not through the bustling event, but down a side path that led to the employee parking lot. I watched him go, not with a pang of loss, but with a sense of closure so complete it was almost physical. The ghost was laid to rest. Everything okay? Daniel's voice was soft beside me. He held 2 fresh glasses of wine, a deep, ruby Cabernet from our newest client. I took the glass he offered. Yeah, I said, and my smile felt effortless, unburdened. Everything is finally okay. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the kindness in his eyes, the intelligence, the way he'd handed me a weapon when I needed one and a partnership when I was ready. Thank you for the recorder, for the introduction to Eleanor, for believing I could do this. I didn't believe it, he said, his eyes holding mine. I saw it. That first day at your parents' house. You were shattered, but the pieces were all there, and they were sharp. I just handed you the glue. We stood in comfortable silence, looking out at the sea of vines rolling into the darkness. So, he said after a moment, a playful note entering his voice. Root Vine Collective. What's the next chapter? World domination of the humble wine narrative? I laughed. The sound light and free. One carefully curated, authentic story at a time. I lifted my glass. The rich, complex scent of the Cabernet rose to meet me. Notes of blackberry, leather, and, undeniably, the earth it came from. Daniel lifted his. To new roots. Our glasses met with a soft, clear ting that seemed to hang in the night air. A perfect, full stop period on the old sentence, and a toast to the one just beginning. As I took a sip, the wine was bold, honest, and left a lasting warmth. I knew the same could be said for the future, and the man standing beside me. In the quiet heart of the country I had learned to call my own.